Alright. Merlin, Manchy, you may start your matches. We're gonna switch back to Merlin's screen here as per usual. Manchy with the smack talk. I like it. Oh, it's been a long while since I've seen Manchy in the game. Glad to have him back. Very glad to have him back. So Merlin with his saber deck, as we've seen the last few series. Manchy, as he's aptly named his deck Reverse Kill Deck. Reverse Kill Deck. Very interested to see this match. So let's take a look at Manchy's board. Manchy's going to be a little laggy, so we're going to focus on Merlin's screen a little bit. So, CTA, Siphon Structure, or Veror Magic Siphoner, Candid, and Mass Death, his command zone. Rita, Agent Coil Soul Seller, and Splitterbot. Two Purity Cult of Veror, Single Purity Genesis.
I think
Funny,
that is
because this is the first time we've actually seen Cult of Veror in this tournament.
I'm gonna make a gamble guess from just what I've seen from early oppression usage that the COV and GI combo is likely to do with the Ether Acolyte combined with the Tinker card, I believe it is.
Correct, Tinker.
To reuse it over and over for such effectiveness. 2/2 on every use.
Be very interested to see if that's what he's actually planning to do here. So far, Merlin is applying a substantial amount of pressure.
Yeah.
To Manchy early on. So Manchy's already down to 72 health. All he's got to defend with is that Splitterbot. Manchy's forced to put Rita out in defense. However, let's take a look at Manchy's hand here. Pretty scary hand he's got. So Mass Death, Demon of Dark Bargain, and a Research, and an Overcharged Storm. Very, very strong hand. And the only thing that is unfortunate about this is Merlin already has his Box Saculus and Martyr Golem combo. He doesn't ever have to move out of the support zone with his board setup right now. He can quite literally just do the Box Saculus combo, and that's it. And that's all he needs to do. So Overcharged Storm goes off and hits nothing. Absolutely nothing. Let's switch back to Merlin's board. Take a look at Merlin's support zone here. Pretty scary setup that Merlin's got going on here. Got Box Saculus, and he doesn't ever have to touch battlefield. He does not ever have to touch the battlefield. He can just drain Manchy with Box Saculus and Tyra. So he is playing, in this setup, a burn. And that's all he has to do. He doesn't ever have to attack. He doesn't ever have to move out to battlefield. He just burns. See if Manchy's able to do anything with this. Manchy's in a pretty tough position for Manchy's start in this tournament here. Mass Death goes off and really doesn't take too much with it. So his Agent Coil Soul Seller is 16-1, so it'll potentially do what it needs to do. I don't see that dragon being able to do too much, but we'll see what happens. So Agent Coil Soul Seller turns into the Subjugated Dragon. 2012 or 28-12, sorry. Manchy's already down to 28.
Yeah, this has been a bit one-sided, possibly due to the card draw a bit, but Merlin has retained almost all of the characters he's put out on the field, and therefore could command the board as much as he wants to. Doesn't even have to because of that burn effect you were talking about. This is actually also done in other games known in another name of DOT, or damage over time, used in League of Legends, StarCraft, all kinds of different games where you just whittle them down continuously. And in this case, it's pretty much a permanent effect, unless there's a card like Assassinate or Called Shot with initiative for Manchy, and I don't see that happening here.
Right. So Merlin has played this to great effect. That's going to be GG. Saculus, the box Saculus and Tyra combo takes out Manchy very, very quickly. Merlin was only able to get down to 76 health. That was a very quick game. Let's take a look at Manchy's sideboard here. Doesn't look like he has actually too much to combat what Merlin is set up to do. Unfortunately, it looks like the deck that Manchy took into the tournament here is not equipped to handle what Merlin is capable of doing. So it doesn't look like Team Metashift Gaming were prepared for this burn that Merlin has.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they weren't prepared to beat their own deck, essentially. Because Merlin and the Dora Bear were playing a very, very close mirror match. And it just looks like Manchy was set up for something very different. And for the match that Merlin and Manchy need to be playing, it doesn't look like Manchy's going to be able to pull off too much against that.
An early Lightning Blast goes off against Chlor, disabling it immediately.
Right, so Chlor is out of the equation for Merlin.
Now, I think
that's
one thing that
good
could...
call. For if you take a look at what was just said in chat there, so all Team Metashift Gaming were set up for Manchy to be facing a very different deck. Helio states, my guess is Manchy assumed Mill would kill any aggro decks before him, so Manchy was set up to take out any of those Mill decks. And that's exactly what Manchy was prepared for. He was not prepared for this aggro/burn archetype. Very interesting point. And that's a mentality that teams will be taking into this tournament, is you want people to be set up for whatever the person before you might lose to. And it simply looks like Manchy was not prepared to deal with what Merlin was bringing to the table. Prozac was Mill, so they assumed that if Prozac lost, it would be to something, Mill-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And Manchy was prepared to beat that. Instead, he's facing aggro/burn, and it does not look like Manchy's going to be able to combat that whatsoever. Higher calling on a fleeting footman, pretty funny, actually. So Merlin draws out his Tyra, pulls his fleeting footman back, does not have access to the box Saculus combo for quite a while here, however, does have a second higher calling and does have Harbingers of Law and Light. Merlin dodges the mass death, just casually, doesn't even need to think about it, just dodges mass death. Completely wasted mass death. You're crazy, wizard. You're crazy.
And he's gonna put...
Puts a Flamed On Commando out just to troll Manchy.
Yes.
So Manchy actually has access to a pretty strong hand here, but he's already very low in health with 39. Let's take a look at Manchy's board really quickly. So Mass Death, Demon of Dark Bargain, Overcharged Storm, but unfortunately, I just don't see it happening. I don't see Demon of Dark Bargain being able to do enough this late in the game.
Yeah, I think the momentum is too far in Merlin's direction at this point.
Right.
It's just too much. There's not much, like you said, that Manchy's deck has to be able to combat this deck style. Now, like you said, the box Saculus combo is not out, but all this other stuff is so effective anyway, he could just pick a random card and throw it out there and win at this point, I feel like.
Right.
He doesn't have to throw anything else out to attack, he just has to throw out a flyer.
I really love this aggro variant that Merlin has here. It's not rush. It's not rush whatsoever, but it is aggro. It has the capability to play slow and burn the opponent down. So what was said in chat here is Merlin is actually playing a reverse control deck. That's not an anti-control deck, it's reverse control. So he's actually using 2 Purity Flamedawn and single Purity Overseers to control his opponent's tempo. And it doesn't look like Manchy's going to be able to do anything about this. Tyra is going to beat Manchy this next turn. He's got Intimidating Rally. Oh, there, he even top decks a Torchbearer. So take a look at Merlin's board really quickly. Top decks a Torchbearer with the Trading Post, pay 3 shuffle. The Torchbearer is going to GG this game anyways. So with Tyra out on the board with a Torchbearer being played, didn't need Box Saculus. This is GG right here. And Merlin has, as you said early, before we even got started, gone and got himself an all-kill.
That he has. He's gone through every player on the other team's roster. Not necessarily 1, 2, 3. It was a really hard-fought one, but it only cascaded from there, and never had... not that he could, but he never had to change his deck. This deck is so strong that it's able to take on 2 or 3 distinct different styles without having to adjust hardly anything from the sideboard.
Right. Very strong performance from MerliniX. Extremely close matches against Adorabear and Prozac, and then goes and stomps on one of the old guard veterans of card gaming. Extremely strong performance. 2-0's Manchy, and that's going to do it for the match between Team Metashift Gaming and Team OTKO. MerliniX from Team OTKO gets himself an all-kill against Team Metashift Gaming. So extremely strong performance. Manchy, MerliniX, GG, well played. Let that be a lesson to everyone who's going to create a team for this kind of a tournament. You're going to want to make sure you have all 3 decks set up to handle something that is going to pretty much do what Merlin just did.
Yes, I can see any of the players watching this, they might be like, oh, this looks really good. And even if it doesn't kill every deck style, it's obviously very good. And I see more players going to be tinkering with the Flame Dawn and Overseer's combo with a few of the key cards or combinations of cards that were showcased today by Merlin's deck, and from the other players as well.
No, absolutely. This was an extremely interesting match. And from what Helios is saying in the chat, it looks like they were prepared to run a very similar kind of deck that Manchy was running in the third match, but they didn't need it. They simply didn't need it. Whatever was going to beat Merlin's deck, they thought they were going to be able to beat with 2 COV single GI. And in this case, MerliniX was the one that beat the mirror match, and was then able to beat exactly what Prozac thought would beat Merlin's deck. And because he did that, Manchy was simply not equipped to handle an aggro/burn deck that beat through Prozac's AoE. Extremely impressive play from MerliniX. Very strong decision-making shown. Extremely well played to all 6 contestants. I know we didn't see the other 2 players from Metashift or from OTKO. We didn't need to see them, but extremely well played matches to MerliniX, Adorabear, Prozac, and Manchy. We're going to take a quick break, everyone, and then we'll talk about what we saw. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out today. We'll come back in just a moment and talk about the tournament. See you in a moment.
See you.